For those of you that have been around the channel for a long time, not even a long time, maybe even a couple of months that have been around the stream, you will have heard me talk about an upcoming investment that I was going to tell you guys about, but I needed to wait until I purchased them all myself. Well, news broke pretty early, and unfortunately I couldn't pass that information on to you guys because it happened before I'd bought all of them. But today, I went over on my stream the presentation of the Great Lightbearer Heist of 2025, and this is the story of how I made 11 billion GP. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's presentation, the Great Lightbearer Heist of 2025. Now, if you've been around my stream for the past couple of months, you will have heard me talk about a big investment that I've got coming up that I couldn't share with you guys yet. Now, the reason I couldn't share it with you yet is because I hadn't finished purchasing them. I was still trying to buy as many as I could, and once I had finished buying them, I was going to pass the info on to you guys, and so all the boys could make some money. Unfortunately, the news dropped a little earlier than I was expecting it to, and I hadn't finished buying all of them. So I couldn't pass the info on to you guys beforehand. And the reason I had to wait till I bought them is because, as much as I hate to admit it, when I talk about items, they fluctuate. If I was to say, oh, this is the investment that I'm in, the price does go up. You know what I'm saying? So I would prefer to have my investment fully in before I tell you guys about it. So then when I do, and inevitably the price does go up, I can basically market manipulate and abuse you guys so that I can make money off you. No, I'm joking. Because I want to make the most money I can. I don't want to tell you guys beforehand so that the price goes up and then I have to pay more money for the items. You know what I'm saying? So I had to keep it tight-lipped. There were a couple people in my circle that I spoke to this about. Adam, Lockie, Phil, you know, all the boys. I said, just keep it under wraps. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, this sounds like a crypto scam. This does sound like a crypto scam. The more I talk about this, the more this sounds like I'm trying to sell you guys a crypto coin. I promise you, I'm not trying to sell a crypto coin, okay? There's no rug pull. I promise. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Great Lightbearer Heist of 2025. If you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, a couple of weeks ago, there was a news post on the Jagex website where they spoke about drop table changes to the Tombs of Amasket. The higher invocation raids are going to have a much lower chance of dropping Lightbearers. You know what I'm saying? A much lower chance of dropping Lightbearers and Fangs. You can see currently in the main game doing 500 TOAs, there's 26.6 raids to get a Lightbearer or a Fang. Both, actually. 26.6 raids, you should see a Lightbearer and a Fang. Proposed changes takes it up to 72 raids. 72 500 invocation raids to see a Lightbearer and a Fang. It's being changed a lot. Now, if we go to the actual news post, guys, I can show you guys what they had written down for all of this. The Tombs of Amasket. On a whole, it seems like you lot were excited at the prospect of tomb raiding with some much requested tweaks. We've got a few updates to share. We're not looking to make further. This is about Baba. We don't need to worry about that. Let's talk about loot. We'll be moving forward with changes here, and we think we've got a solid direction after some time going over all of the data. We'll even throw in some fun facts. Our goals here are effectively twofold. Decrease the volume of Osmunton's Fangs and Lightbearers entering the game because they're considerably undervalued. Decrease the overall volume of TOA uniques entering the game because the raid is far too generous at the top end, warping the rest of the unique economy around it. An extra side goal is to try and make things healthier economically, since the considerable majority of our players are not Iron accounts, without significantly harming the player journey for Iron players and making sure that pushing higher raid levels still feels worthwhile. We don't want skilled players to feel like they need to spend all of their time in mismatch magic gear at 200 raid level for the best rates. To start with, let's take a look at where the purples are coming from. Solo clears account for 74% of all completions. Duos account for a further 16%. Teams of 3 to 8 make up the remaining 10%. In terms of completions by raid level over the past year and the proportion of uniques they introduce, here's how things look. Raid level 0 to 150, 5% of completions, less than 1% of the uniques. 150 to 300, 42% of completions, 22% of the uniques. 300 to 350, 23 and 23. 350 to 400, 11 and 16. 400 and 450, 12 and 25. This is insane, by the way. You can see that the 400 to 450 raid level shits out the uniques. 12% of total completions, but 25% of the uniques. 450 to 500, 4 and 7, and 500 plus 3 and 7. The biggest standout here is the well-known 400 raid level milestone. Completions at raid level 400 or above account for 19% of completions, but contribute almost 40% of the total uniques. While it's important that pushing your raid level up should be more rewarding, we think the data we've got suggests that there are things are a tad too generous towards the top end. The first part of our proposal is to reduce the purple chance for raid level beyond 300. While necessary, we appreciate that this on its own doesn't feel great, and also doesn't necessarily strengthen the value of lower tier uniques. To counteract that, as the raid level increases beyond 300, the waiting for the Fang and the Lightbearer will decrease, meaning you're more likely to see a Missouri piece, Tunic Shadow, or Aladinus' Ward. Whenever you do hit that purple chest. We've got some approximate numbers here, but it is worth keeping in mind that these don't account for invocations like Walk the Path or Pathseeker, nor do they account for things like Skull Skipping, meaning your odds at higher raid levels may be a little higher than indicated if you're making use of these. All of these values assume that you're soloing, since that's the most popular option by far. First, a look at how your chance at any purple changes as raid level increases. So as you can see, the chance at any purple is going down quite substantially over that 300 raid level. And on top of that, the chance of getting a Lightbearer or a Fang is substantially going down. Now, what that means is the price of the Fang and the Lightbearer are going up, which is great for me. I'm going to be taking you guys through how I went through my thought process and the reason that I ended up investing on Lightbearers and Osmumten's Fang. It all started with clue number 1 quite some time ago. Clue number 1 was the OSRS roadmap, ladies and gentlemen. At RuneFest this year, they talked about all of the upcoming updates coming to old school RuneScape over the course of the next year. And one in particular caught my eye. Now, that is right here. Summer Sweep Up. Drop table adjustments. This one caught my eye because when there's drop table adjustments, that means prices of items are going to change substantially. When they talked about it at RuneFest, they spoke about how they wanted to stop as many blood runes and stuff like that from coming into the game. For those that have been around the channel for quite some time, you will know that I was heavily invested in the Soul Wars items. I had 120 million adamant bolts. I had 50 million rune bolts. I had a bunch of blood runes. I had a bunch of soul runes. Had a bunch of coal. Those that have been around for a while know that I was heavily invested in drop table changes to Soul Wars. Now, they have spoken about that. I've since sold all of my Soul Wars drop table items. And they had already spoken about it, but they had not spoken about the summer sweep up yet. They talked about the drop table changes, but they'd not mentioned anything else in this summer sweep up. So I'm thinking, there's got to be something else. There has to be another drop table they're thinking about changing. And I was like, I wonder what that could be. There's so many drop tables in the game. I'm not too sure. Until... Oh, this is the Addy bolts, by the way. I forgot that this was part of the presentation. This was me making 2 bill on Addy bolts because of the drop table adjustments to Soul Wars. Okay. Then, clue number 2, ladies and gentlemen. This is what actually clued me into the fact that there may be some drop table changes coming for the Tombs of Amasket. and it's this: the Confliction Gauntlets. This information in this section is outdated. Please check out the blog, blah, 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 blah. When it comes to gauntlets, we hear your concerns regarding the Shadow. This reward and project as a whole doesn't have a scope to address specific Shadow issues. So what we've opted to do is make a tweak to the description of the passive. Now, in this same news post, I don't know if I actually have this news post up. Let me just double check. No, I don't have the news post up, but I can just tell you guys about it. In this specific news post here, they spoke about issues with the Shadow and the Shadow being too powerful and the Shadow ultimately being too common of a mega rare for how powerful it is. The cogs were turning inside my head. If they're talking about how the Shadow's too powerful and how the Shadow is too common of a mega rare for how powerful it is, and they're also talking about drop table adjustments coming up soon, it's not too far-fetched to think that maybe the Lightbearer and the Fang, which are two insanely powerful weapons and insanely cheap, may be affected as well. We may be talking about a huge change to the drop tables. That was clue 2, and that was enough for me to be like, let's do this. Now, as you guys know, I have some fun ideas here on the channel, okay? But whenever I have an idea, I've got to pass it past someone else because I'm an idiot. So, of course, I messaged Lockie. You can see here, this was on the 30th of April. I said, been thinking about this one. Drop table adjustment. They've been talking about taking a look at the Shadow and fixing it. Maybe they're taking a look at the rest of the drop table as well. And Fangs are only 10 mil. So in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to buy a bunch of Osmumpton's Fangs. I'm going to buy a whole bunch of Osmumpton's Fangs because it's too powerful of a weapon. And I think it's going to go crazy. I messaged Lockie. What does he say? Of course, Lockie has a much better idea. He says, how much are Lightbearers? Duh. I say, what about Yama into Varlamore Part 3 into Fang drop rate nerf? Pause, champ. He says, money time, baby. I said, I'm already convinced. He goes, we'll actually have the capital? I said, I'm going all in. I'm already convinced. I go, imagine they turbo nuke the Fang drop rate. It's legit a mega rare in terms of power. It could 10x. And he goes, it's crazy it wasn't a mega rare. And I said, this is our Aram staff. I'm telling you. Now, for those of you that don't know about the Aram staff, you're in for a fucking treat, okay? The Aram staff is a classic. This was a post that was made on the old school RuneScape Reddit 8 years ago from a guy named Fafat Sismirif Hafabu. Yep. And he talks about how the Aram staff should be buffed. He talks about how it's too weak, it's a Barrow's weapon, and for some reason, it's two-handed. The Aram staff should get a buff, it should get some magic damage percent, and it should become a one-handed weapon so that you can use a shield with it. Right here, stat change ideas, make it one-handed, percent magic damage bonus, magic accuracy. All of those things happened. What happened to the Aram staff? You can see here, when those changes came through, it went from being 50,000 GP up to 190k immediately. And then, of course, over the last few years, just snuck up. Now, this guy's name, for those of you that might remember, or those of you that are smart, you might notice his name backwards is Buff Aram Staff. This guy has made so many posts about buffing the Aram Staff because, well, it turns out he had 85,000 Aram staffs in his bank, and his idea to flip them was to go on the Reddit and constantly ask for the Aram staff to be buffed. He ended up making 10 billion GP. That's why I said to Lockie, this is our Aram staff, bro. This could be, we could make a whole lot of money from this. This is our Aram staff. You know what I'm saying? This is us. Now, of course, like I said, I wanted to get the Fangs. I messaged Lockie. I said, this is my idea. He's like, you're onto something, but how about light bearers? And I said, dude, light bearer is probably a way better call than Fang. It's much more likely to 10x. It's a lot easier for an item to go from 2 mil to 20 mil than it is for an item to go from 10 to 100. So I said, I might do 5 billion fangs and try and get 15 billion rings. Let's get 7,000 light bearers. You know what I'm saying, guys? I'm all in at this point. Now, at this point, I've started buying the light bearers, okay? I've started purchasing some on all of my alt accounts because they have a buy limit of 8. So I spread my wealth out across my 10 accounts and I can buy 80 rings every 4 hours instead of 8, and I'm stocking up on them. But that doesn't stop the clues from continuing to fall. I'm already all in at this point, but I'm getting all of the extra clues to make me feel a little safer, a little bit better about my investment. Incoming clue number 3. They drop a big bombshell in the update about a month ago. In this update, we're refining the item sync further. Added burning clause to the sync list. Increased sync rates for several high impact items, including the Osmumpton's Fang and the Lightbearer. So, stage 1 is already coming to fruition. They are already basically saying with this that the Osmumpton's Fang and the Lightbearer are too common. There's far too many in the game, and the price of them is dropping too much. So, for those of you that don't know how the Grand Exchange sync works, you pay now a 2% tax on any item that you sell to the Grand Exchange. If you sell an item for 1 million GP, you pay 20,000 GP in tax, a 2% tax. What will happen is, let's say you sell a light bearer for 2 million, you pay your 40,000 GP in tax. After 50 light bearers have been sold and it reaches 100%, it reaches the price of the light bearer, the game will purchase your light bearer and then it will just delete the light bearer from the game. So there's less of the item in the game and the price can slowly flatten out or even potentially rise up. So they've increased the sync rates for several of the high impact items, including the Osmumpton's Fang and the Lightbearer. Like I said, I'm already all in at this point. I'm already in, but these are some extra clues that I've been given from Jagex so that I know, well, I'm making the right decision here. I'm making the right decision. The best part about having the Lightbearers and the Fangs, they're already at 2 mil and 10 mil respectively. So my idea, my thought process for the purchase is, there's huge, and not to sound like Jordan Belfort here, okay? There's huge upside potential and very little downside risk. They can't really go lower. The Lightbearer is already at 2 mil, and it's the most powerful ring in the game by far. But it could go to 20 if they nuke the drop table. Then, of course, we had Mod Ash post in the Discord. Since the sync has been launched, there's been 5.4k Spectral, 5.4k Arcane, 2.9k Volatile, 1.8k Harmonized, 1.8k Eldritch, 400 T-Bows, 3.6k Ancestral Hats, 2.5k Tops, 2.5k Robes, 2.1k Kodai Wands, 5.4k Bulwarks, 38,000 BGSs, 13,000 AGS, 13,000 SGS, 18,000 ZGS, and 3.7k Ancient God Swords, 10,000 Zamorak Spears, 204,000 Tentacles, 253,000 Occult Necklaces, 54,000 Blowpipes, 17,000 Lightbearers, and 0 Osmumpton's Fangs. There is no Fang on this list. So, after this was dropped, we see the Osmumpton's Fang has its rate increased as well as the Lightbearer. And we can see only 17,000 Lightbearers have come out of the game, even though it's a super common item to get from raids and it is super cheap. So, with all of these context clues, I'm saying to myself, Lightbearers are going to go up. And at this point, they did. They went from 2.1 mil up to 2.7 at this point. The problem was, I was still trying to buy some. I still had another 700 Lightbearers in the GE that I was trying to get, and I upped my price to 2.7 because I knew they were going to go higher. This item sync just means it's going to go up. You know what I'm saying? So that was clue number 3. At this point, I'm feeling very, very, very comfortable with my investment, and I feel like I've most definitely made the correct choice. And then the final clue, ladies and gentlemen. The final clue, which said to me 1 billion% I've made the correct call, and I need to buy as many light bearers as I can right this second because it is coming. The final clue, Mod Kieran on Reddit saying, what would you suggest on TOA? And ladies and gentlemen, let me show you. Mod Kieran's comments on this post. This post was, if you think 80 hours to Torva side grade is too long, you're playing the game wrong. They changed the drop rates on the Yama drops on release. They said 3 days after the Yama release that the drops were too common, and they made them rarer. And people were saying, I can't believe you made them rarer. Now I have to spend an extra 20 hours getting my Vesisla armor. That's what people sounded like. You know what I'm saying? That's what people sounded like. So the mods came on and they responded. You know, we don't want to leave things too late. Mod Kieran here says, we can be more accurate than what we were on launch day. That's on us. We will obviously strive to be better. That said, getting them spot on is hard. Having 0 tweaks after launch every time isn't realistic. I think it is far preferable to fix them in the first couple of days than leave it years. We've made that mistake before, and changing things then is far harder. This guy says getting them spot on is not hard. It's impossible. There's no spot on. Everyone wants different things. But God, I wish you'd make tweaks after years, even though it is much harder. Mod Kieran, unprompted. Nobody said TOA here. Mod Kieran says, what would you suggest on TOA? Unprompted. Someone said, oh, I wish you would make changes after years. He goes, what do you suggest we do to TOA then? What should we do to TOA? And I'm sat there like, nobody fucking said TOA, Mod Kieran. Nobody fucking said TOA. But thank you for giving the information that I needed to double the fuck down and buy as many light bearers as I possibly could. You know what I'm saying? Buy as many as I possibly can. Now, I had a problem at this point, guys. This is my flipping tracker, and as you can see, I have 23 Soul Reaper axes that I bought for 470 mil a piece. And at this point, the Soul Reaper axe was at 400. I didn't want to take a 1.5 bill loss, but that was 10 bill that I had locked up that I was trying to get into light bearers. I was like, I got it. Should I sell them? should I sell them and buy some more light bearers? It feels like a sure thing at this point, and I didn't. I could have bought another 3,000. I could have bought another 3,000 light bearers, but I didn't. But that was the final clue, ladies and gentlemen. That's what clued me in on the TOA changes coming. Now, remember, this was 26 days ago, guys, and the change came a week ago. So there was 3 weeks between this post when I knew that it was coming and when it came. So the aftermath, ladies and gentlemen, of course, when the drop table changes were announced, they are not in the game yet. They have just been announced. You can see the price of light bearers went from 2 mil up to 6 mil. The price of Osmumten's Fangs went from 10 to 30 and has now settled down at 21. This is settled down at 4.6. But for me, I think it's still going up. Now, for you guys, I think it's too late. Okay? I would never suggest that you get in at this point because I think there is downside risk now. There is obviously upside potential, but there is downside risk. So I'm not suggesting you guys get in at this point. In fact, I think you're too late. If I wasn't too crazy, I would sell as well at this point. But I am too crazy. I've got more money than sense. You know what I'm saying? And I can see these going a little higher. But yeah, that is the aftermath. Me personally, guys, here's a screenshot of me buying the rings. I bought most of them for about 2.2, I believe. And I have 264 Osmontans Fangs and 3,555 Light Bearers. I invested 10,683,149,936 GP. And if I was to sell all of the items right now for their grand exchange price, they would be worth 21.6 billion GP. That's a profit of 11 bill for a 2-month investment. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Great Lightbearer Heist of 2025. Pretty fucking good. On top of that, guys, my editor, Adam, he invested 1 bill and made 1.4. My other editor, Phil, I believe invested 500 mil and made 500 mil. And Lockie, how much did you invest? Lockie also got in this because I was talking to him about it when I first thought about it. I don't know how much Lockie made, but he made some money. Oh, only 600 mil, he says. Only 600 mil. Okay, Lockie, we get it. You're rich, bro. We get it. That's crazy. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Great Lightbearer Heist of 2025. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video soon. Bye-bye.